Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to focus on styling the show page. So right now our show page looks like this. We have our little nav bar up here with the buttons that don't do anything. We have an H1 with the name of the campground. Then we have an image and a description. Then we have a button to add a new comment, and then all of the comments are displayed, each one as a little paragraph. So our goal here is to make it look a little bit more like this. So I'll have a sidebar over here. We're not going to have the map just yet, but we'll make room for the map. And then we'll have our main content with the description, some text, the title. We're not going to do the ratings yet, but then we'll also have a list of reviews that will look like this. Their own little container down there. I'll have a little button to leave a review. Generally, it's a little bit more styled. We can add this in that says how many reviews have been left. So that's what we're aiming for. And to start, we're going to just focus on the Bootstrap grid. Remember that the Bootstrap grid is 12 units across. We're going to designate 3 out of those 12 for this little sidebar, and then we're going to add 9 in for the main content. Before we get started on actually changing anything, I want to point out that I'm working in V5 now. So if you want to follow along, all these changes will be in V5. And the reason I'm doing that is that we're going to have to make a custom style sheet. We're going to have to serve the public directory and a few other things that are substantial changes. So I wanted to make a separate version. But before we do that, the first thing we're going to do is add a container around all of this, a Bootstrap container. So in show.ejs, I'm going to add a div with class equals container, just like that. And we'll be putting everything inside of that. And I'll start by adding this sidebar in, and we'll just fill it with some dummy data like we have here. So div, and this needs to be class equals row. And in that row, we're going to have another div where class is column medium 3, just like that. And then inside of here, we're going to add a paragraph, and we're going to get this text that says YelpCamp. So that's a paragraph where the class is lead, and then we're just going to put YelpCamp for now. We will be changing this eventually, but YelpCamp. And then to add those little list items, we'll do a div where the class is list-group. And then in here, we're going to add a bunch of LIs, and each LI has a class of list group item. And inside, we'll just add some dummy data, and we'll just call it info1, and then I'm going to duplicate this, info2, info3. And then let's see what that looks like for now. So if we refresh the page, we have a sidebar here, and I'll make one of these items selected to start, and all we have to do is add in active right there. If we refresh, we now see that one of them is active. And this is really just a placeholder to have something there so we don't have a lot of white space. But again, we will be adding real data there and a map eventually. And just to point it out, the map will go right here inside of this medium 3 column eventually, but not just yet. Okay, so that's the sidebar. Now we're going to add in the main content. So we need another column, and this one is div class column medium 9. And inside of there, we need to have the H1. We need to have the image. But before all of that, you'll notice it's actually all in one of these thumbnails, just like we have on the home page. Each one of these is a thumbnail. We're going to do the same thing around the entire image and the title and the comments and all of that. So we're going to add a div, and that div will have class equals thumbnail. And then inside that, we're going to add the image. And I'll steal the image we've already written and just place it right in there. So that's going to be our campground image. And then we also want to add a class to that Bootstrap gives us, which is image-responsive. There we go. Save that. And if we take a look at what we have now and refresh, we at least have the image and the content in the right place. We have a problem where this isn't taking up the width that we want it to. I want that to go all the way across. And we'll have to handle that with some custom CSS at the end. And now we'll go back and add this in here, where we have the name of the campground and then the price per night, which we don't actually have in the database, so we'll just hard code it. So let's do that now. And that's another div. And this one has a class of caption-full. And then inside of there, we're going to add an h4, and we're going to pull this over to the right. And we do class equals pull dash right, and then whatever we put in here will be the price. And I'll just start with $9 a night. Again, this will be coming from the database eventually. If we refresh now, we get $9 a night on the right side. And then we want to get the name of the campground, which I'll just copy over here on the left-hand side. So we'll put it right below. And if we don't add pull right, it will automatically go over to the left, although that's bigger than what I had in mind. And I'll turn that into a smaller h4. And I'm going to add an anchor tag inside of there, just like that, and put the campground name inside the anchor tag. And the idea behind that is that eventually, if I go back, this should be a link to the actual campground or the park service page where we can go to book something. For now, it's just a link to nowhere. Okay, so we have that in, we have our price. Now let's add the description back in. So that will just be a paragraph tag, and then we'll add in our description, which is campground.description, right there. And it's going to be a little bit underwhelming because we don't have a large description right now. So what we might want to do is go and seed the database with some lorem ipsum. And I'm just going to steal this, and I'll copy that and go back to the seeds file, and then inside of our seeds file, and I'll change the description on all three of them. We'll just make it the same thing. Rather than blah blah blah, we now have a longer bit of lorem ipsum, and we'll save. And then to make this go into effect, we have to restart the server because that will reseed the database. And then let's go back and return to the campgrounds page. We have 3 campgrounds. However, they now have a more legitimate description, some text. Okay, great. So let's take a look now what we need to work on. There's a few minor things. We'll leave the stars and the review count alone for now, and we'll move on down to the comments. Let's go back to the show.ejs file. We can close out of seeds for now. And what we're going to do is add in a well, div class well, inside of the column medium 9, because we want it to be in the same column here, taking up the same amount of space. So to do that, just go right here after the thumbnail. So this ends caption right here. This is the thumbnail. So right there, we're going to add div class equals well. And then inside of that, we're going to open it up. And this is where we'll do the looping through to add the comments. But I'm going to start by adding in the button, the leave a review button. And we'll just do a simple div. And this div will have a class of text dash right. And then inside of there, we're going to add our anchor tag here that we already have to create a new comment. And just put that here. It's a long one, but remember it's an anchor tag that has a class of button success that makes it green. But the href is a really long part. It's going to campgrounds / the campground ID / comments / new. Let's save and refresh. Okay, so you can see we now have the well. That gives us the nice gray background in the border. This is where we're going to add in the comments. So what we need to do next is loop through the comments, and we already have that done. But rather than just making a paragraph for each one, we're actually going to make a separate row. So I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to copy this or cut it, and we can delete this extra paragraph. And we're going to put that right after the text right. And let's indent this properly. So we have our loop, and then we're going to loop through each comment, and we're going to add inside of here a div class row for each one. Div class equals row, and then inside of each, we're going to add another div class equals column medium 12, and save that. And if we take a look at what we have here, we end up with the username, email / username, which we called author. And then on the right, there's this time, 10 days ago, which we'll just hard code for now. And then the actual comment comes next. So to make that work, we need to do some text and then do something on the right, a pull right, text right, and then we need to add a paragraph in for the actual comment itself. So let's try that. I'm going to go in here. We have our column medium 12, and inside of that, we're going to start by just adding the comment author. So let's just add that right there. And then below that, we're going to add in a span. and this will be on the right. So we'll add class equals poll right, and then in here we'll just add 10 days ago for now. We'll just hard code that in. And then the last thing we want to do is actually show the comment text. So I'm going to get this comment text here, and we'll put that inside its own paragraph, which we already have here, just like that. Except we want to move it inside the column here, just like we have the author and the 10 days ago. We want them to be in the same column together. And now let's save and go back, see what we get. All right, so we have one comment, that's it. But you can see that we have a button, add a new comment, make sure it works. And the comments are displayed here. We're missing the rating, so it looks a little bit weird, but that's fine for now. What we might want to do is go add 1 or 2 more comments. So go back here, and let's just do some more lorem ipsum. So I'm just going to copy parts of this and add them in as comments. Just do some of that. And the author here will be Camping Grandpa. Submit. Okay, so we're now getting our comments here just fine. That's working. I do have some space that we want to add. If you take a look at what we have here, there's a really faint line. I don't know if it'll show up on the screencast. There's a really faint line that adds some spacing in, and all we need to do to make that work is add in an HR. So right after this text right, which is the button, we just add in a horizontal rule. And if we refresh, we now have some space there, we have our button, and we have all our comments being displayed. In the short term, why don't we bold the username? So we'll go back here, and we already had this, and I got rid of it, but we'll go back and add it again, a strong tag with the author. And that will make it a little easier to see. There we go. Still not great, but good enough for now. So that's actually all the bootstrap that we need to do for now, but we're still not done. If we go back and take a look at the finished-ish version, you'll see that the image takes up the entire thumbnail, and ours is not doing that. Even though I made a point to use the exact same image, it's not about the actual image itself. The problem comes down to our styling. And what we want to do is go in and tell this image to take up 100% width of the container. So I'll show you. We can just inspect it, and this is a great use for the inspector here. We can select it here, and then over here we can add in a style with 100%. And there we go. So that's one thing that we'll want to do. There's still a very slight difference, which is there's a little space right there that we don't have on this one. And to get rid of that, all we want to do is go into the actual thumbnail and select the thumbnail, which is right here. And we're going to give that padding 0. And now if we take a look, it looks the way that we want it to look, or almost looks the way we want it to look. We're going to add some spacing here as well. You can see there's some spacing down here, and we can fix that right now, also by inspecting it. And remember, we're not actually fixing it, we're just testing it out in the browser, and then we'll go back and actually make these changes in our own style sheet. So what we want to do is add in a little bit of padding on the caption full, which is this box here. And the padding we want is on left, right, top, and bottom, and it's going to be 9 or 10 pixels. So we'll just do padding 9px. And there we go. We end up with a nice spacing there. So now what we want to do is take that styling and actually add it into a style sheet that we're going to write.